This is how you cook a rack of lamb. You enter the farmer's market. Here are gleaming piles of Japanese tomatoes. There a cavalcade of avocados. Yon a basket full of fuzzy peaches, straining at their skins, promising you momentary gustatory oblivion. Look, the vendors are already shuttering their stalls, packing away vegetables, wiping, sweeping. Caught up in the final throes of the market, you buy a sack of okra on impulse. And whammo, you're back in Sylacauga, Alabama, a fucked up fish out of water teen, eating a heat-wilted plate of fried okra, fried pork chop, fried green tomatoes in some southern woman's home, knocking back tea so sweet it makes your teeth scream. While the older woman with Coke bottle glasses and Confederate lineage tells you why virginity is sacred. Save yourself. And you swallow that okra. Don't tell her about the scrawny truck driver you made out with last night and almost on the red dirt road choked with kudzu because you couldn't help yourself. Back to the market. Study the piles of avocados, pick them up, squeeze, look like you know what you're doing. Ask the avocado man, what kind is this? How does it taste? Why do you live alone and what do you yearn for? Do you like selling avocados? What do you regret and is it too late? Buy 2 avocados and re-enter the market. Turn a corner where it is quieter and smell before you see a stand that reeks of flesh and blood, of butchery, of animals rendered into strips, chops, shoulders, loins, gizzard, tongue. Stand there, read about the goat special, hearts and livers, $5.99. Remember the decapitated cowhead squatting on a stump on the narrow streets of Palermo in Sicily, where you traveled once upon a boat with a man you thought would be your lover, but instead he refused to touch you, even when you lay in the same bed tucked with cool white sheets, the vendors shouting over bullhorns at the crack of dawn, and in the daytime you wandered the streets together seeking doors on which he would paint ancient prophets for an art show back in Rome. This is when you, frustrated and sullen, passed by the head of a decapitated cow, a still bleeding head. You never did erase his gaze, the surprise of it, and the fear, how the blood trickled and lapped over the stump like red lace. Wrench yourself back to the meat stand. Talk with the sales girl. It's hard to use now, isn't it? Her arms sleeved with Japanese tattoos, her belly bare. What's your name? Michelle. Why do you work on a farm? What are you running from? Do you want to come home with me? Listen as she tells you there is only 1 rack of lamb left. Only 1. Would you like it? Our animals are grass-fed. They roam free. They are happy. This lamb was only slaughtered this past Monday. Do you have the balls to face a freshly slaughtered lamb? Funny, your name Resnick means butcher in Hebrew. How could you forget? Yes, give it to me. $23, okay. And you take the rack of lamb, stuff it into your bag, and glide as if in a dream back home, where you place the rack of lamb in the refrigerator and ignore it, or try. Yet you know the lamb was running around, happy, grass-fed. Only this past Monday, and today is Wednesday, then Thursday, then Friday. On Friday, you run into someone who says, you have to decide. If you don't cook the lamb tomorrow, you gotta freeze it. And somehow the thought of freezing this lamb so recently stripped of its curly white fleece, its pumping blood, stripped to its fleshly glory, isn't right. You must cook the lamb. You must eat it. You must take courage. So you decide tomorrow. Saturday, you will make a rack of lamb, even though you have never brought a piece of meat into the house that you can remember, except for an occasional In-N-Out burger. But never a raw piece of meat smelling of drained blood and fat and flesh and butchery. At night, your mind crowds, unbidden, with images of sunlit, grassy farms, animals romping, the sun shining off their coats, their warm animal hair. The rhyme repeats like ticker tape. Mary had a little lamb, little lamb, little lamb. Saturday comes. You remove the lamb from the fridge, set the vacuum-packed rack on a meat cutting board. It seems to pulse with freshness, juices, nothing like other cuts of meat you've ever seen in grocery stores. You snip away the plastic, and there it is, the glistening lamb, the rack, thick with fine fat, no bones visible. You think of Rodin. You think of Camille Claudel. This is your stone. You must cut it away and reveal the sculpture that is this animal. As you cut, holding the meat tenderly, feeling its fat and flesh, the underneath of ribs, you hear again the mournful sound of a shofar. And you tug at your father's coat there on the crowded streets of New York, trying to get his attention. You sit again with your mother in the pews of an ancient church in Italy, stained glass windows, wanting her to hold your hand, draw you close. But she is transfixed by a Caravaggio gleaming from the candlelit shadow. Now you can summon the rhyme, having spilled red blood on the yellow oven mitt, having felt the lamb's ribs separate near worshipful fingers under your blade, at your touch, so gentle. And you carve slowly, carefully, for what seems like hours until, though not scraped clean, there it is, a rack of lamb. The lamb's life seems somehow to be a happy one, the death not unmerciful. Maybe you're tripping. But joy emanates from the flesh, and the rack released, gleaming there on the counter. Forget any fancy crust. Let this meat be simple olive oil, salt, and pepper, a quick searing on the stovetop, then rested on the broiler pan in the oven. You are in tune now, you and the lamb, the sacrificial lamb, forever youthful, pure jouissance. When you think of your father now, you see a painting by Goya of the god Saturn eating his son, stuffing him in his bloodied mouth and tearing off his limbs. Because sometimes parents live in the biblical, a time when children were the enemy and must be sacrificed. You know this is the fierce land your father lives in, yet with this sacrifice, today, something's gained, not lost. The smoke winding upward from the lamb, the unexpected perfection of the meat, the simple beauty of the chops. Your friend who dines with you calls them lamb lollipops and sucks in ecstasy. The meat tearing like butter from the bone, on her face a look of sublime satisfaction. You give thanks silently, the taste of the lamb pungent on your tongue, and you move into a state of savory grace. You sit there with your belly full, your heart radiant with flavor. What is it you are still wanting? All of you with your impossible appetites, I'm talking to you.